Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second healthcare webinar. You'll forgive us, we were a couple of minutes late. We panicked because we lost Kate due to internet issues. So thankfully we've got her back. So if we could just go on to the next slide. Thank you for joining us today when we're going to discuss the changing to the national healthcare standards, cleaning standards. Just a bit of housekeeping. I'll go through some welcome and introductions shortly. Presentations will be around 15 minutes each. We'll leave 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So if you've got any questions as we go, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom, and I'll moderate them at the end, and we'll ask the questions and hopefully get some good debate going. And then I'll just wrap up at the end with a quick thank you. So we can go to the next one. So first of all, welcome and introductions. Firstly, myself, I'm Peter Galley. I'm the chair of the Healthcare Working Group. We've got two great presenters today who are going to give a presentation of how the change in the healthcare standards have affected them and what it means to them and to their businesses. We've got Kate Edwards, who's the Healthcare Development Director for Equity Solutions. And we've got Jacinto Jesus, who's the head of healthcare operations at Mighty Healthcare Services. So I'd like to welcome them and thank them for their time and effort doing this today. Next slide, please. Just before we begin, a little bit about the Healthcare Working Group. There's a purpose there, the steering group. Just a short plea from me that if anybody would like to get involved in the steering group, then at the end, I'll put my contact details up and raise contact details up if you want to get involved in this in the steering group, or if some of the topics spark your interest and you've got a passion, or you can do some speaking, or somebody who is an expert in that field, then and please do send an email to us and volunteer, because we are always looking for great speakers on great topics. So. Next slide, please. And finally, the important thing, your CPD number. So please take a note of it. It was at the beginning of the slide. So take a note and put that in your CPD records. And now I've given my short introduction, so I'll hand over to Kate, so who can kick off with their presentation. Over to you, Kate.
Thanks, Peter. Hi, everyone. Just a bit of background. As Peter says, I'm the Health Development Director for the Equity Solutions Group. We are responsible for three NHS lift areas, which are Cornwall, Oldham and Sheffield. And we've been responsible for the design, build and finance and operation of 21 primary healthcare buildings over the last 20 years. Today, I'm going to start with a quick summary of the key changes to the national standards of healthcare cleanliness guidance, focusing on the changes in requirements, which will then feed into the next presentation from Jacinto on the implementation of these changes and what that has meant for teams on the ground. But firstly, I want to talk a bit about the reasons why we need to embrace the changes, why we should be looking to adopt a continuous improvement culture, and how we at Equity and Community First have taken steps to try and go beyond the current guidance around cleanliness and IPC standards in our buildings. So if we start with the basics, the new standards were published in April 2021, and they replaced the previous specifications from 2007. The new standards took around 5 years to complete, and they also now include considerations during a pandemic. They were developed in collaboration by FM sector specialists from NHS Property Services, NHS E&I, various estates and FM leads from NHS organisations, along with industry experts such as Mighty, OCS, ISS and others. The document is clear that some of the aspects are now going beyond guidance and are mandatory requirements, and as such should be written into outsourced contracts. And the changes are being developed to allow flexibility that should meet the needs of all healthcare organisations, although I am aware that on the ground there's some debate that how that works in reality, particularly for smaller practices such as primary care, single-handed GPs. But provided that all organisations are fully compliant with the 2007 standards, the new requirement shouldn't incur a cost for implementation. Again, I'm aware that in some smaller practices, this has and continues to be a challenge. For example, if you're a single-handed GP with not a large FM team around you, it's always going to be an additional cost and resource on what they already do. So what I've tried to do is summarise the key changes that I've taken from the document and what are really instrumental changes of where we need to be for the healthcare sector. One of the key points that has really stood out to me is that every staff member has a level of responsibility for cleaning. It's not just IPC and it's not just down to FM. Cleaning audits need to demonstrate to building users that areas are subject to critical cleaning regimes, and the results of which need to be demonstrated via the new star rating shown in all patient areas. Flexibility of standards. Previously, the guidance tended to focus on larger organisations such as acute and community hospital settings, but the new guidance does aim for these standards to be applied across every healthcare setting, including primary care and smaller community settings. Efficacy audits have now been widened, including an option to blend functional risk areas. This allows teams to maximise resource. And each functional area has now been designated cleaning frequencies that need to be adhered to. And as such, adhering to these frequencies for cleaning, all organisations are expected to sign up to the new Commitment to Cleanliness Charter. I'm sure you've all seen the document by now, along with the suite of tools and templates that have been provided, but if not, they can be found at the NHS website, where you will find all the tools and templates that go with them. As for the implementation timelines, this is dependent on the organisation size and type and whether those organisations operate areas that are now subject to mandatory regulations. Implementation guidelines are agreed with NHS estates, along with any extensions or requests for additional support. But what I wanted to do now, having looked at where the changes are in this most recent guidance, is to have a look at the need for this change and the need for us to look at continuous improvement. I guess I could have taken lots of quotes from the people that were leading during the pandemic, but the one I've chosen here was most recently put in the Lancet from Professor Jonathan Van Tam. And for me, it's the key point around the need that we need to consider these new approaches. We need to look at the lessons learned from the pandemic, and importantly, we need to act on them. Whilst the spotlight has been on cleaning and the IPC sector, should it have taken the pandemic to highlight the problems with hospital-acquired infections? After all, there was an existing problem pre-COVID, but it didn't quite attract the attention or focus like it should. So, why do we need to embrace this change? There are some pretty hard-hitting figures shown here from the World Health Organization, and this is pre-pandemic, and it's the old normal as we refer to it. So pre-pandemic, there were 4 million people in Europe that were acquiring a hospital-acquired infection every year. As a result, 37,000 deaths as a direct result from hospital-acquired infection. And these figures are actually comparable to the number of people who die in road traffic accidents, but we seem to have learned to accept infection risks. But should we? Especially when we know these risks can be eliminated further by adopting new technology and new processes. But cost of lives isn't the only issue. The burden placed on already overstretched and under-resourced NHS staff needs to be acknowledged. Again, the figures shown here are pre-pandemic, and they're just as hard hitting. In 2016-17, 21% of all bed days were lost due to healthcare acquired infection. There was over 79,000 days of absenteeism among frontline healthcare workers. And as you can see, the cost just runs into billions. So where are we now? The cleanliness standards recognise the need for positive change, but I guess my question is, do they go far enough? So if we look at strategic improvements for the healthcare sector following the pandemic, there's been a time because of the pandemic where the system's been awash with new innovations. There are innovations that include support to existing systems, to improve processes and development of new technologies. And I've listed a few there, for example, which range from these monitoring tools, audit systems, and even environmental cleaning systems. And for me, this clearly demonstrates a move in the right direction. But the challenge for the healthcare sector is to be able to balance value for money, safety, and how any impact from these new systems can be monitored and measured. Or if we don't do that, do we continue to accept that there is always going to be a level of infection risks in these settings? And I guess if they are, what do we feel is an acceptable level? I want to leave you today with an example of continuous improvement that we've embedded into some of our community first estate. And the example taken here is in Oldham, and it's the Integrated Care Centre. It's a multi-tenanted building, and like many others during the pandemic, we were asked to develop a COVID hub. Our lift buildings luckily are inherently flexible in design, meaning that changes required structurally were minimal. However, we wanted to see if we could go a step further to look at if we could reduce infection risk in what would be a high risk area, but without placing additional burdens on frontline staff. Having done lots of due diligence, we introduced a system called LumiBio, which enhances traditional cleaning methods. It's not a fogging system, it's completely safe for staff, patients, and the environment. And the system actually operates in the live environment, which means there's no downtime for staff or for patients, so you can continue to maintain that optimum capacity. LumiBio continues to deliver a pathogen-free environment, and the way that we know the system is successful is that it is delivered as a managed service. It includes routine and scheduled environmental sampling, which adds critical data for FM teams, also providing assurances for staff and for patients that areas are clean and safe. What we wanted to do at Community First is to ensure that the system that we put in is cost effective in the healthcare setting, and in all circumstances, and thanks to the regular environmental sampling, LumiBio has demonstrated the ability to reduce pathogen levels to zero or close to zero in these working environments. And whilst there's always going to be a need for traditional cleaning, LumiBio is able to demonstrate that these systems can be enhanced to reduce infections risks for staff and for patients. And it provides a significant advancement for environmental cleanliness standards. In addition to these benefits, one element that we were completely blown away by is the ability to reduce burdens on frontline staff, but still achieve outstanding results. And furthermore, also rebuild confidence with patients that are using our healthcare buildings after being kept away for so long. We wanted to ensure that the people coming to these buildings knew that they were as safe and as clean as we could provide. So I guess to wrap up, my view is that the new standards should be seen just as the start. We can and should want to go further to not just accept that there's always going to be an infection risks associated with these buildings. We know there are new tools and new technology, such as LumiBio is the example given here. It's not the only one. And by embracing these changes and embracing these new systems, we can vastly improve the situation around healthcare acquired infections. And we should want to embrace these fully evidence systems, move away from visual checks that for me can be highly subjective. And the outcomes are clear. We can save lives, we can protect staff and patients, along with improving the high financial impact of lost bed days and staff absenteeism. So I guess I'll leave you with a question to think about for the end. Should it have taken a global pandemic to highlight where we need to change? And are we finally going to use these lessons learned to improve the situation further? Thanks, Peter.
Jacinto?
Thank you. Right, okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. Excellent presentation there by Kate, leaving us with, yeah, definitely some questions and some thoughts that we should all consider. So before I just get on to my presentation about the, our approach to the implementation of the standards, I just thought I would, kind of bring everyone up to date with our capability in Mighty Healthcare. I'm not going to go through the numbers you can see on the slides, but it's fair to say that our capability and geographical presence has increased significantly over the last year or two, and in particular with the acquisition of Interserve, which has been very successful for Mighty. And we're also very proud of our organic growth, which includes, large accounts such as John Radcliffe being the latest addition to our Mighty family. Our capabilities now extend from full range of soft services and hard services, including energy management, as well as net zero capabilities. And if any of the colleagues on the call would like to learn more about what we do, please visit our website. So, following, on from the excellent introduction to the new cleaning standards by Kate, I would like to just cover, in a bit more detail, some of the key changes that we've seen with the new standards. I personally believe that the cleaning group that have worked on this for a considerable amount of time, considerable amount of effort that the group have put into developing the new standards, I think they've done an exceptional job at developing high quality training materials and tools, some of which are on the screen as just as an example. The new cleaning methodologies are really good and of a high quality, easy for the staff to understand, easy for for anyone to really follow through, and the videos are great as well. Just focusing on some of the key changes, replacing the cleaning audit scores with the star rating that Kate also made reference to, I think is a very important change, and one that has, I think, created a lot of dialogue within the, within healthcare, within the community, simply because it changes from probably being a non-visual cleaning rating, using the old approach of displaying the cleaning scores, to now displaying star rating that's very much in line with the, food scores or food ratings scores on a door. No one, I think, is going to be happy to have 2 or 3 stars rating on the door. So there is definitely a lot of discussion and debate still around organizations not wanting to display the star ratings as it stands. But I do think that there is a very positive change, and that we should all embrace. The other key change that I think is quite significant is the additional 2 risk ratings. So moving from a 4 risk ratings that we had in the old standards to a 6 functional risk ratings. I think that's quite a significant change, and one again that has had a quite significant amount of dialogue and difference of opinion. There's one option to introduce blended functional risk, and I will have to say that it's quite complex to do it, and it's quite challenging to achieve the blended functional. It seems quite simple to apply, but in practice, it can be quite challenging to implement. So how have we in Mighty implemented or our approach to the implementation of the standards? I think it all starts with identifying the key stakeholders. I think without getting the key stakeholders around the table and discussing how we're going to implement the standards, what are the key priorities for each particular organization, it's a non-starting point from my point of view. So it's really important to identify the key stakeholders. Internally, we developed a gap analysis assessment tool to assist us in identifying the change of input hours based on our market-leading productivity rates. This tool is designed to give a bit more of a scientific approach to the assessment process that we have undertaken for for a lot of the trusts that we work with. And then following a very program-based and methodology-based approach to the implementation, taking in consideration, some of the key aspects and the key milestones of the implementation, and starting with, local risk categories. How do we move from the 4 risk categories to the 6 risk categories? It's an opportunity. And we very much see this we've seen this as an opportunity to reset and have a complete review of how we do cleaning for each hospital trust or for each organization. One key aspect of this, which I believe it goes back to what Kate emphasized, is that everyone is responsible for cleaning. And developing a commitment cleanliness charter starts with the highest level in the organization. The charter should be signed and authorized by a board director who ultimately will have the responsibility for the cleaning in that organization. So I think that is really important, that everyone takes part and feels responsible for achieving cleaning in each organization. What are really the steps for success? I'm not going to bore you to go through all the points on there, but stakeholder engagement and understanding the new standards will no doubt achieve a better implementation of the standards. Agree cleaning responsibilities is fundamental to understand, whether it's cleaning, whether it's the estates colleagues, whether it's infection control, the nursing colleagues' responsibility for certain aspects of the cleaning. Having a clear understanding of where the responsibility sits is fundamental to developing and agreeing the new standards. Documenting all of the process of change is another key aspect that we emphasize. And then it goes on to, does everyone consider phase implementation by area, standards, launch publicly and regular client newsletters, updates, implementation of the star ratings as per timelines. I think, as I mentioned, it's fair to say that I think not all hospitals, certainly that we service, are aligned to that requirement at the moment, and it's working in progress. And formal training for staff, I think this is an aspect that is absolutely critical. We talk a lot around implementation of the new standards, getting everyone to understand what the new standards are about, and whether there's going to be a financial implication or non-financial implication, and how we're going to do it. But often we forget that the staff that are going to deliver the cleaning standards are the most important. They've got to be trained. They've got to be kind of taken on this new journey. And I think there's more even in Mighty for us to do to make sure that our cleaning staff are taken on that journey, understand what the new standards are, are aiming to deliver in the future, and how they can participate and contribute to the success of these new standards that have been implemented. So what are the challenges? And I thought that it's important that we are very transparent on where we are with the new cleaning standards. And what I'm about to say and what you can read on the screen, it probably goes slightly against some of the things that we've already said. But the truth is that there are different interpretations of the standards and its implementation on the ground. There is an inconsistency in how the functional areas are being categorized. And in some cases, the range of areas that are distributed to the top functional areas are it varies from trust to trust significantly, not just by a couple of percent, I'm talking 10–15% variance between one trust and another trust of a similar size and similar services. So that's another area that I think is important that we start exploring. Resistance to implement lower risk categories. I think this is a topic that has again generated quite a significant amount of dialogue, and is because it's perceived to deliver lower cleaning standards, but that's not necessarily the case. The risk is being clearly assessed on how we should approach the cleaning standards. The new cleaning standards, I think, quite well provides recommendations as to which areas should sit within each risk category. However, where we are today is that there is still a resistance, and I would love to hear more about this particular point, because it's one that we get to talk about quite often. But yeah, so that will be interesting. And then the financial benefits. You heard Kate talk about that it should be cost neutral. If you're already on 2007 standards, we implemented new standards, it should be cost neutral. And Kate is absolutely right. It should be cost neutral. However, we are seeing trusts and organizations where the costs have gone up. And I think the costs have gone up for a number of reasons. Maybe, that organization were not actually delivering to the 2007 standards, or it could be that not all the risk categories have been implemented. And that is one of the reasons, or one of the key factors that I've seen costs going up. And I've got examples where certain hospital trusts have decided to only apply 4 risk categories instead of the 6. Well, that's definitely going to push the costs up, or definitely put more pressure on the cleaning team, because there are some enhancements or increases in cleaning frequencies within the top categories of the new cleaning standards. So if we're not balancing the workload and the spread of the risks across the the premises, it will definitely increase the cost base. And then one final point that again I would like to generate some discussion on is the adaptation of technology and innovation. Again, Kate touched on the importance of this, and why did it take a full pandemic that's had such an impact on our lives to realize that we've got to do something different. We've got a unique opportunity with the new cleaning standards to do so. But look, and I'll be honest, and again, is to generate discussion. I think is slow. The adaptation of technology is slow. But we're here, and I'm about to take you through a couple of slides that will demonstrate what we are doing in Mighty to really drive innovation in technology. So, and here we are with our brand new, we've had the launch of our Cleaning and Hygiene Center of Excellence recently. It's a fantastic unit that I would very happily, welcome people to visit, and I'll be very happy to take colleagues to visit the unit and demonstrate what we're doing. But this unit is really designed to create healthier and more hygienic spaces in the future. Hygiene has now taken on even a greater importance, and organizations need cleaning services that can efficiently deliver and maintain the highest cleaning levels. And that's exactly what we're trying to achieve with this unit. It consists of 6 zones, and each zone is dedicated to to a number of things. So, for example, zone 1, we have a laboratory, research and development, and here is where we're really going to test those those technologies, those innovations. How efficient are they? The efficacy of some of those technologies that are out there. That's where we're going to do it, and we will be able to demonstrate the results by using the technology that we've got in this unit. Zone 2, we proceed to talk more about innovation and what is best in class in terms of specific equipment. Zone 3, we talk about people benefits, the perfect cleaners cupboard. Everyone loves a cleaning cupboard. I love a cleaning cupboard, and so there we've got a standardized approach that I would love to look. I've been in the NHS or working, with the NHS for many years, and I would love to see more standardization, because I think with that we achieve better standards. And so in this zone we have a perfect cleaning cupboard with a standard approach that we are going to implement across the board. BICs and other training materials, but we're very very invested in using BICs in our industry, and we'll continue to develop that partnership going forward. Zone 4 is all about sustainability and Plan Zero and having clean products going forward and reducing our impacts, the impact of cleaning on the environment. And Zone 5 is my favorite, is the virtual reality of our training. It's taken it to a different level, really. It's quite unique and quite amazing, actually, what the team have delivered. But from a healthcare infection prevention and control, it's great. You can see exactly the hotspots that we should be cleaning. So when you're training a new member of staff, it really takes them on the journey, and he shows them exactly how to flow around the unit, where to start, where to finish, what the touch points are, how important it is. So it's very, very powerful. And then the last zone is all about demand-led cleaning, sensor data, providing really kind of the end results, and demonstrating how data and technology can be used in the cleaning services. And I move on to talk about a technology that we are promoting and that we are installing across some of our clients in Mighty, more on the non-NHS clients, I have to be honest, more on the private sector, where we have installed this technology. And it's similar to the technology that Kate referred to, similar but not the same, because this is more about the air and the environment, the quality of the air in the environment. And I think that since COVID, the uptake of the UVC disinfection systems has increased significantly in non-healthcare environments. But I strongly believe that this technology has a place in healthcare and can play an important role in reducing airborne infections and improving the quality of the air that we all breathe, when we are in the healthcare environments. Why is this technology important? Well, I'll take you to the next page, and you can see here that, he has a proven track record. So this is a solution that we promote in Mighty, that we've got all the verification, all of the validation and certification needed, but there are many others out there in the market. is scientifically proven to eradicate 99.9% of airborne viruses, and with independent white papers as well to support it. So I think that, the technology out there, but going back to my point around the slow adaptation of technology, I don't mean just having, microfiber, for example. I don't mean just having an auditing system, an electronic auditing system to verify and to produce, nice charts and nice reports at the end of the month. I talk about technology that will make a difference in the future and will potentially reduce will reduce the potential of having, another pandemic like we've had with COVID. Thank you. And over to questions. Over to Peter.
Thank you, Jacinto and Kit. So first question that's come in, how does legislation translate to independent caregivers? So how do the standards translate to independent caregivers? And is there an expectation that care homes are being included in the future, or just the belief that everyone will meet the same standards?
I'll feedback on that first, Peter, if that's okay with Jacinto. We are members of the Infection Prevention Society, and there is a full suite of documentation, cleaning documentation for care providers, social care. And I've seen situations where the kind of guidance crosses over, and whilst they're similar, there are slight nuances in that guidance that's out there, which isn't helpful for the people on the ground. But what I would advise people to do is to take, dependent on who's looking at the guidance and where they should be, in terms of the sector that you're operating, I would urge you to get in touch with the Infection Prevention Society and take their guidance, because in terms of the care home sector and the independent sector to a certain level, they're going to have different implementation requirements. So I'm kind of touching on to the next questions that are coming through, but an independent sector that is providing services to the NHS patients, they should be subject to the same standards as an NHS patient going into an NHS facility. So it's very difficult to navigate, but going back to the original question, there is separate guidance for social care.
Okay. And I think you're picking up on some people who are asking about private healthcare settings there, Kate, weren't you?
Yeah.
So next question from Gordon is the customer taking responsibility for specifying the level of required cleanliness only, or is there something more? Presumably you don't mean they are taking responsibility for the cleaning. I'm not sure whether, I think what Gordon's trying to ask is, are they just taking ownership of the output in specifying the level of cleaning, or are they actually participating with you in setting the standards, maintaining the standards, taking ownership of the standards, and I'll say assisting in a certain extent in the cleanliness standards?
Yeah, I mean, if I start and then Kate, please add in. I think from my point of view, we very much support our customers to design the standards, to implement the standards, to monitor the standards, to give best practice, get best advice, support them with an introduction of technology and innovation. But I think that the ownership and the responsibility, and if I can call it accountability, sit with the top of that organization, whether he's a trust, so if he's a trust, will be with a board, and whoever the director designated to be the responsible person for cleaning within that environment. Of course, they're not responsible for the day-to-day cleaning and for delivering the standards, but ultimately, if there are questions, that person will be responsible.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, Jacinto, and I think it comes back to the first point on or one of the points on my slides, that everybody has a responsibility for these standards. And for us at Community First, we're in a quite different position. We are landlord, for want of a better term, for the building, but we do feel a responsibility to ensure that our buildings can be as clean and as safe as possible, which is why when the clinical service provider spoke to us around in terms of additional cleans, deep cleans, we wanted to look at what else we could do, which is why we took the responsibility to look at the next level of technology and what was available to support those teams. So I would re-emphasize the point that whilst ultimate responsibility, I agree with Jacinto, is with the board, at varying levels, everybody has a responsibility for these standards.
Okay, hopefully that answered your question, Gordon. Question from Mark Griffiths. With the financial pressures on trust, with the financial pressures that trusts are under, do the panel think it's only a matter of time before the resistance to recategorising the risk categories and areas starts to be overcome?
If I start again, Kate, I think is twofold. I think that first, we as service providers have got to provide the assurance and the expertise and the quality output to demonstrate how cleaning can be, how good standards or quality standards can be achieved across all the risk categories. You know, if I sit on the other side of the table and people are asking me or suggesting that we're going to reduce the cleaning input, which potentially is going to have an impact on the output, I'll be concerned. So it's I think there is an ownership on you know, my side of the fence to you know, to provide that level of assurance. Of course, there will be pressures, I think, and I've got a very good example, just very recent. We've worked with a trust that I'm really pleased that we've done that work, where a few functional areas have been moved from one of the higher risks categories to the lower risk category, and £100,000 savings have been achieved. Now, it might seem small, but over 5 years is £500,000. And, you know, we're not talking a lot of functional areas. We're talking, you know, less than 10 functional areas that have been moved or recategorized, and recategorized in a methodology that aligns to the recommendations, so it's not outside of the recommendations. So I think that if colleagues around the NHS start picking up on examples like that, I think that will start, you know, driving the dialogue and giving hopefully colleagues the assurance that you know, the new standards are there and will deliver good outputs if we're all doing the right thing.
Yeah, again, Jacinto, I agree with the point that you've made there, but coming at it from the other perspective as well, and the figures that I put on the slide, I think in the UK healthcare sector, we have this ability to just accept certain risks and accept that that's the way it's always been. We've got cost pressures, we need to make savings, we can reduce. But when you start looking at those figures around the amount of people who die from hospital-acquired infection and actually accepting that we need to do something different, I think we've got to have that honest conversation. So it's quite easy to look on the flip side of saying, if we start rolling back on the standards that we're putting in, we're going to start losing more money in terms of absenteeism, lost bed days, all the things that we talked about earlier. So I think there will be a temptation to have those conversations. And I would hope that if we're having those conversations and things do start to revert, we don't get hit with something like the pandemic again, where we go, we should have, or we were headed in the right direction, but we rolled it back. So that's where I am on that.
I agree, and it is a very fine balance, Kate, and it is a very fine balance. And I think that, you know, you need to take it all, not just one thing. And I think the considering technology is really important as part of that discussion. If we just talk about reduction, then yeah, I agree with you. The risks are then increased as opposed to mitigated. But I think if we consider the full implementation and the recommendations that have been put forward, and some of the technology that you spoke about, some of the technology that I spoke about today, I think then we've got a much better chance of creating safer environments.
I agree.
Peter?
Sorry, my internet dropped out.
Oh, right.
I was desperately trying to get back onto my Wi-Fi hotspot. Sorry, everyone. So we've got a question here. Given the shocking statistic Kate gave regarding the number of deaths to HAIs, is the NHS willing to spend more on resourcing the standards and innovations that you've both demonstrated, or do you feel there's a resistance?
Okay, I'll go first. There's definitely a resistance. In terms of introducing LumiBio and the process that we went through with our infection control teams and the clinical teams, LumiBio has been in the market a long time, but it took the pandemic for people to take an interest in it. So it's got all the certification, all the relevant safety information. And what we were finding is that we were getting through certain infection control teams. They were really happy, they wanted to move forward. And then we'd come up against health and safety. Then we'd come up against the value for money question, which we were able to show that it's on par with an ad hoc deep clean. But there's resistance at every level. And I think we're always going to get that with change and continuous improvement. However, in the last few months, maybe 2 or 3 months, and my involvement with the Infection Prevention Society, there is a definite change in language and people wanting to do something different, people wanting to support FM teams with new technology that basically makes life easier for them and supports them in the work that they are doing. So yes, there is resistance. Yes, it's difficult to get new technology and advancements through, but I think there is change out there.
Okay, thank you. It's not in the Q&A, but Don Rawlings has asked a question saying some trusts are looking to use the new standard as a driver to lower costs by reducing the FR to one of the 2 new ones. What are your thoughts? Is it a cost driver? Are people incorrectly using it as a way to reduce costs? Or
Yeah, I think that I might be shot after this call, but I think that if there's any organisation or trusts implementing the new standards to drive costs down, reduce costs, I think that will be the wrong approach. It might. So if we take the full exercise and I gave the colleagues on the call a very brief summary of what we've done, but behind the scenes there's so much more that goes on in terms of actually pulling it all together, and the steps that we've taken to really consider all aspects of the cleaning and the outputs of the cleaning. I think that if the whole implementation is done from start to finish and at the end it generates some saving, fantastic. But if the objective at the starting point is to reduce costs, then I think that's the wrong thing to do. That's the wrong approach. It should be around, let's implement the standards to continue driving, the standards to get better outputs, to have consistency of cleaning standards. Sometimes it's not for better cleaning standards. Sometimes it's for achieving consistency of cleaning standards, because that's what's important. Let's face it, outbreaks are often caused by inconsistency of things, not just the cleaning, but other things. It's not that people make mistakes every day or people don't achieve the standards every day. It could simply be that on a particular day, people have just not done the things right and it caused an outbreak, whether it will be cleaning or the clinical teams that have not done something that they should have done. So I think that, I don't know if Kate has a different view, but I think that that's the wrong approach.
No, I agree, Jacinto. I think you made the point in your slides around, to get better, we need to have a standard across the board that we're all working towards. And I think we'll remember the chaos from the pandemic around guidance and how it changed, and various teams doing things differently and in a different order. And I don't think we can embed that continuous improvement standard that's going to be that's going to have a positive impact unless we're all on the same page of where we want to be and what we want to achieve.
So we've got another question here, and it links in with one that I was going to ask, actually. So the question's, while many trusts understand the benefits of smart technology and smart sensor cleaning technology, indoor air quality monitoring, etc., how can we ensure there is more support from the board to encourage this and enable the transition to a data-led regime, including appropriate funding? So I was going to ask, do we think you'll ever get to a demand-led cleaning regime? You know, do you think the standards certainly in non-clinical areas will be demand-led based on sensor technology, and will it ever get there in terms of a clinical function? You know, so AI and things like that.
Obviously, I can only talk from my experience specifically with LumiBio, and the fact that with LumiBio you have the ability to use environmental sampling to demonstrate the product's efficacy. I think until we get to accept that that's the level at which we want to achieve, so that we know areas are pathogen free, we're always going to have this level of guessing game. We know that our cleaners and our FM teams and our IPC teams work hard to achieve the standards that they are, but the way that those are monitored are from a visual check. So I just don't see how we can move forward without that data-driven response to say this area has been swabbed 3 times this week and it's 0 pathogens. We have had instances in one area where somebody hadn't used the LumiBio system, and we saw the pathogen levels jump up, and we knew then that there was a problem, and it was a problem around the person training, as Jacinto's picked up on, not using the system correctly. So it was giving us a heads up that there might be a problem. If we didn't have that environmental sampling, we wouldn't have that heads up. So I think it's got to be data driven in the future in terms of where we're going to achieve those standards.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with what you said, Kate. And in Mighty, we've taken a very, it may sound strange, but a very scientific approach to cleaning going forward. And I think we are already influencing a lot of organizations, but I agree that there needs to be more. We should, and we will be influencing, the Department of Health, the Cabinet Office, you name it, other other interested parties that we should really be talking to about these things. But infection control or infection prevention and control are, absolutely important in driving this. And we've got to do more to provide that assurance, the efficacy around some of these systems and controls, so that we can move the conversation on. But, if I go back to what I presented around the Cleaning and Hygiene Center of Excellence that we've opened, that's designed to do exactly that, to bring people through the unit, through the center, to see exactly how things can be done, and also to learn. So it won't just be about us, look how great we are. It's also to listen and learn from other colleagues and other people that will come through the unit and say, oh, have you considered this? But having something to showcase and really demonstrate how we should be talking about cleaning and how important it is, I personally believe that it's really important, and it's I think it will start driving the message differently going forward to what we've done in the past.
Excellent, thank you. Probably got one quick question. So Don Rawlings again, do you think that we are overthinking the standard, and actually the concerns are around the not around the standards but around the audit protocols?
There is always a danger with new standards or with new processes that we overthink. I think we within my team, I think we did that at the beginning. We were kind of overthinking it until we started, putting things down and putting a group together to start talking about the new standards and how we go into, what we were going to do, we were in a very, in a very unique position, because we had a colleague, with us working for Mighty, who was in the group developing the new standards since day one. So we were in a very unique position, because we had inside knowledge of what was being discussed and how we were, doing that, throughout the development program. But I with regards to the auditing, I think the auditing is actually, is been simplified. I think the efficacy audits, I think, is a great addition. If we go back to the old standards, there was management audits already in the old standards anyway, but there wasn't a clear definition. Now with the efficacy audits, there is a clear definition around, more engagement from the various functions in the hospital that should come together and really do an assessment of all the areas, and participate in and then going back to Kate's point, talking about that is everyone's responsibility, by bringing the group together from all the various functions in the hospital. That's exactly what efficacy audits are trying to deliver. But by the way, I don't know if I answered the question.
I agree with that, Jacinto, but Dawn, I think it's a really interesting question. I think you picked up on the point that I'm trying to make around the efficacy audits. I absolutely admire the need for the teams to collaborate more with the new guidance, but I absolutely recognise the point that I think you're making, Dawn, that without that data-driven response around environmental sampling, which would support the teams who are doing the efficacy audit, I think it could be simpler, because that there is data evidencing that these areas are safe and clean, rather than having to bring together that full team. And I mean, there will still be a need to bring together the team to do a visual audit, but also have the scientific backing that the areas are pathogen free.
Okay, I think we've used up our time. Well, we can wrap up there. Thank you, Kate and Jacinto.
Thank you.
I'm back on screen now without crashing my my Wi-Fi hotspot. So, as promised at the beginning, you'll see here there's hopefully some of the topics we'll be covering in the next webinars. So if you're interested in getting involved, or someone who's an expert in this that would like to present or speak, then please do drop Ray or I contact details. And also, if you'd like to get involved in the steering group, please drop us a note. But finally, from me, I'd just like to thank Jacinto and Kate. Excellent presentations, some good debates, some good questions, and hopefully everybody found it useful and informative. Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your time.